Hello everybody, it's Monica Smith here from Worcestershire Speech and Language Therapy. Some of you might know me, some of you might not. The last time I saw the majority of you was back, I think, in the autumn term, and we talked jollily about doing a presentation on regulating emotions. And who would have thought we'd have ended up doing it like this? We wouldn't have believed us, would we? If we'd known back then what was going to happen. But never mind, things have changed, so we have to move with it and we have to be creative, and so we are. So I'm talking to you today through Zoom, but it's not live, it's recorded. It's a live recording, so I've just pressed record and just gone for it today. So unfortunately, I can't hear what you say and you won't be talking to me, but at periods throughout the video, I'm going to be asking you to pause the video to think about some of the things we've said and perhaps carry out a couple of little exercises or do a little bit of something, maybe with somebody that lives in your house with you or somebody that you're working closely with. So there will be times throughout that you can stop. And the great thing is you can pause me whenever you like to go make yourself a cup of tea, which is ideal. Now, this is a technical challenge for me, so please bear with me. I am now going to introduce my slides to you whilst talking to you at the same time, which is for somebody who struggled to actually transfer a phone call in the office. My colleagues will be laughing at this. Before lockdown, and now I'm doing this kind of thing. Who would have thought it? But we are. It's the new world and this is what we have to do, and that's absolutely fine. So let's get that presentation up. Okay. So yes, we're doing our communication TA training today, and today we're going to be talking about helping children to learn how to regulate their emotions. We're not going to be talking about how to get people to stifle their emotions, not speak about their emotions, behave in a prescribed way. It's about getting them to understand themselves and learn how to manage their emotions in certain situations to make life easier for them, ultimately. Okay, so my experience, for those of you who don't know me, is that I've worked in Worcestershire for a number of years now, and I've worked in autism bases, special school, mainstream schools as well, and I've worked with an awful lot of children over the years who really struggled with this in particular, and often they had very good language skills and lots of other skills that were great, but their ability to regulate their emotions and react to the context and to do it independently was really, really lacking. And so I found out a little bit more about it and went on a course back in October down in London with a lady called Leah Cooper. Now, and the reason for that, the reason now I have to talk about this is the legal bit, because this training is based on that training that I went to back in October. And Leah Cooper is the occupational therapist. She's an American occupational therapist who worked in Chicago, and she developed zones of regulation. So I have not written it, it is not mine, it is absolutely Leah Cooper's work. And this training is based on that training that I went to a little bit, but a lot of it is actually based on work I've done with Michelle Garcia Winner's resources, my experiences in Worcestershire schools, but I am not a certified trainer. And if you have watched this video or you've been on a course that I've delivered, that does not mean you are either. There is no certification that goes along with this. If you want that, you need to contact Leah Cooper. And if you want to be a certified trainer, you need to contact Michelle Garcia Winner or Leah Cooper to be certified trainers of their products. Okay, so that bit's over. Right, I'm going to ask you now, are you sitting comfortably? I know I am. I know it's something I had to really think about before I started this video, because sitting comfortably is a really important thing. Because I know if I'm not sitting comfortably, I can't attend to you. I know if I'm not sitting comfortably, I might have a back problem tomorrow. It'll get on my nerves. It will stop me listening to what people have got to say to me, and also remembering what I've got to do next. So it's important for me to be sitting comfortably where I am. And as adults, we know what our sensory triggers are. We've got an idea of ourselves. We've lived with ourselves for quite a long time. And so I want you to have a little think about what your sensory triggers are. What adjustments have you made today for this video? Did you have to think about the room you were going to be in? Did you have to think about quiet? Did you have to think about where you were going to be sitting? Did you have to think about, were your feet on the floor? Are you okay with your feet up? All sorts of things. Have you made yourself a drink? I know I have. I have my Lionel Rich tea mug here. So I've got my drink with me because I know I like a drink while I'm talking. Have you had a snack? Is your tummy full? Are you going to be okay? There's going to be no grumbling? Basically, what I want you to understand is that everybody is a sensory being. We all have sensory needs, And we all have things that adjustments that we make ourselves, because we know ourselves quite well now as adults, and we know roughly the kind of stuff that we need to do in order to make ourselves feel comfortable, and also that everybody is different. So I'm going to show you this, which is a really nice one. I think I like it. It's a sensory profile that I've made here. And the nice thing about the sensory profile is it looks at all the senses. I mean, we all thought there were only 5 senses, but actually there are 2 hidden senses. So we've got the normal 5 senses of taste, smell, touch, visual senses and auditory senses. But there are 2 other ones, and the other 2 are called proprioception and vestibular sense. And proprioception is about where your body is, about your body's sort of reaction to itself, about this feeling that I'm doing now, the thing I'm doing now with my hands, of understanding that sort of feeling of tightness, of release, and understanding how my body works and how it's attached to itself and how it is and how it reacts to all these things that are going on around me, and how I can manipulate that. Ooh, and that sort of cracking of fingers and things like that, all that sort of stuff. And vestibular sense is about balance, it's about where I am in space and time. You know, am I anchored? Which is why I like to have my feet on the floor, because I like to know that I'm sort of where I should be. But everybody has, you know, access to these senses, but some people avoid particular sensory input. There's certain sensory inputs that we really, really seek as well. So if I was to use me as an example, I would say that proprioception, if I was thinking about things like yoga and Pilates, not a fan. I've never really been a huge fan of that kind of thing. I've always felt a little bit strange about it. I've never really enjoyed that sensation. I wouldn't say I actually avoid it, because I like a stretch when I'm tired. So I put myself down as neutral for that. Vestibular sense, that sort of sense of dizziness. I am not somebody who likes fairground rides. I don't like going on the waltzers, but I like the odd drink, so maybe I don't mind that too much. But I don't like to be overly dizzy. So I would say, again, I'm sort of probably veering towards the avoidance on that one, because I think if it was a fairground ride and it was going to make me feel dizzy, I'd probably avoid that one. Taste, love taste. I love food. I love spicy food. I love trying new foods. I'm very, very open to that. And the taste of food is really, really important to me. So I think I seek that, unfortunately. Smell is a no-no for me. I hate being in a school when it's dinner time. I hate walking through the lunchroom. I can't bear walking past that shop called Lush that sells the bath bombs. It's just too overwhelming. I find really, really extreme smells very, very difficult to handle, so I avoid those things. I like light smells if possible, so I'm an avoider of that. Touch, I am a touching person, which is why I'm finding lockdown very difficult, but I'm very lucky to have my family with me. So I find touch really, really sensory. I like touch. I like touching fabrics. I like touching people. I like that sort of sense. So maybe I'm a little bit proprioception as well, possibly. Visual things, I like colours. I like bright things. I like light. I'm very much a visual learner. I like to see things mapped out in front of me. I like pictures. So I think I seek visual input. And auditory input, I like music. I like listening to the birds sing. I like listening to voices and people. You know, I'm not bothered by loud noises or anything like that. I'm quite happy to be in that environment. So as you can see, my profile is possibly going to be quite different to yours. So what I'd like you to do now is I want you to pause the video for a little moment, and I want you to have a look at your copy of this, which you should have in your pack. And I would like you to maybe complete that if you can, go through it and see how you feel. If you don't mind as well, if you've got somebody in the house, it might be quite nice, somebody with you, or perhaps you're at work, if you could find a colleague or somebody else to do it with and do it separately, and then maybe compare both of yours afterwards, and just see, you know, are they different? Are they similar? And also think about what lengths do you go to avoid or to seek out that sensory input, like I spoke about mine a minute ago. What is it that you do? How do you adapt your environment to avoid something or to actually create it and bring it into your life? Okay, so we're going to pause now. Okay, so now that we've finished pausing, we can go back to our video again. So hopefully you've done that activity. So how was it? Did you learn something about yourself? Have you learned something about somebody in your family? Was it interesting? Did you think about, well, actually, I do go to quite extreme lengths to avoid touch, possibly, and try not to be in crowded spaces? I mean, given the current situation, I think we're all going to be doing that a little bit, perhaps for different reasons. But actually thinking about that sensory input of touch and closeness to people, maybe that's something you've been a bit avoidant of in the past. It's not very comfortable about going to crowded places, perhaps, and enjoying, you know, a walk in the countryside rather than going to a packed cinema, maybe. And so children, as like adults, obviously are just the same. But the difference with children is that they don't know themselves as well as we do. They're still learning. They're still working it out. And the other really important thing is that they have less control of their environment than we do. I'm able to make those decisions about myself, but children have less control over really what goes on around them. And so sometimes it can be difficult for them to try and work that one out or to understand themselves. And that you can sort of see how sometimes these things can go wrong. So there are two ways that we regulate. On the left, we've got the self-regulation, and that's knowing ourselves, knowing what we can do ourselves and using our own strategies. And like I said, most adults are pretty much in that category. But there's another type of regulation, and that's mutual regulation. And that's using other people as a source of comfort and being able to accept that source of comfort, being able to accept that help and strategies. That's a really, really important thing. Some of our young people are very much happy to accept help and strategies. In fact, sometimes they're overly doing it and they haven't really worked out the self-regulation part. Some of our young people are struggling in both of those areas. They don't know what to do to help themselves, and equally they're not very happy about getting help at that time either, and very resistant to it as well. And adults, adults are still working themselves out to a certain degree, but equally you're not completely going to be self-regulating as an adult. You would still have mutual regulation, possibly from a partner, from colleagues, or from friends. If you're feeling a little bit worried about something, you might ask their advice or feel that talking to somebody about an issue that you've got actually makes you feel a little bit better about it, or coming up with a joint plan actually makes you feel a little bit better about it as well. So we're all works in progress. None of us are completely perfect. We're all still trying to work it out, but the young people that we're working with might be facing some more struggles than we have at the moment. So what is self-regulation? Well, it's our ability to control our own thoughts, our emotions, our behaviours in relation to our environment, in relation to the context that we're in. When I talk about context, I talk about who we are, where we are, who we're with, when it's happening, and anything else that's going on around us that could have an impact on how we're feeling, on how we react to something. So I'm going to show you something which is interesting. So first thing in the morning when you wake up, everyone has to wake up from sleep. That's something that we all have to do. That's a very common context, isn't it? But when we wake up, we could just grope for the alarm clock and switch it off and put it on snooze maybe for a few extra minutes, because that helps us. We know that we have to rouse ourselves gradually. We've managed that about ourselves. We know that that's something we need. Some people, not so much. Some people that wouldn't work for, they've got to get up immediately. For some people, they know that just that extra 2 minutes is actually fine. Some people wake up and their immediate thought is anxiety. I'm feeling anxious about my day. I'm feeling anxious about what's going to be happening. I'm thinking about the list of jobs I've got to do. I'm thinking about all the things I've forgotten to do. How can I manage that? There's a lot of advice about that kind of thing, like writing a list at night when you've got that thought in your brain, or having a notebook by your bed, writing it down and getting rid of it, getting it out of your head at that time. But as you can see, at that point of waking up, there are two completely different reactions to that waking up in the morning. The third person is really irritating because she's woken up and she's just happy with the day. She's having a stretch. She's feeling good about what she's got to face coming with her. She's probably done her list. She's probably up to date with everything. She's the kind of person we're all very annoyed by. But she's coping with her waking up in a very, very different way to everybody else. So the idea of this slide is for you to understand that we can all be in the same context, but we can react to it differently, based on our previous experiences and based on who we are and whether or not we've really worked out those good strategies for ourselves yet. And again, it's the same for the children we work with. So what is normal? Well, being open to new ideas, accepting advice, accepting new ideas from other people, and accepting that maybe you can think about things in a slightly different way. Limiting side conversations, being able to work with somebody but not feel that you've got to have conversations with lots of people, and be able to focus on that one thing, focus on that one plan at a time. Engage positively in the activity and be able to be part of it, be present, and also react to what other people are saying, to not just be working singularly within a group of people where everyone else is doing something, but you're doing something to the left. You've all got to be working together and bouncing off each other. And being able to reflect thoughtfully, being able to think about your reactions, think about what you did, what was your input to a task, and actually think, I did this okay, I'm going to try a little bit harder to do this perhaps next time. I did this really, really well, I'm going to do more of this next time. So when you're thinking, when you're reflecting thoughtfully, it's when you're having a balanced view of yourself. You're not feeling totally negatively about yourself. Equally, you're not thinking the best thing since sliced bread. You've got some thought in there. You're able to reflect. So how do we regulate? Well, there are 3 basic things that we do. We can change our physical environment. Like I said, having a chair, having a comfy chair, having a drink, making sure we've been to the loo, making sure that we live in a house that's nice and light, because we like light and we're really, that's the thing that makes us feel happy. But obviously children can't do that particularly. They have some control, but not ultimate control. And obviously in schools are very inflexible, and you're all going back to a school environment that's very, very different, where actually you have even less control of your physical environment. And so that's going to be a much bigger challenge for everybody as we go forward, and particularly when we're going back into school. We can develop a plan. So let's say we can't change our environment, we can develop a plan about that. We can think about our plan. We can think about, yeah, we can't do this. We can't do anything about the chairs we sit on in school because those are regulation chairs. But maybe we could introduce something that might be helpful. Maybe we could do something where instead of sitting on the floor because we're finding it difficult to sit on the floor, maybe we might be allowed to sit on a chair to keep our core stability. Those children that have problems with proprioception or problems with their vestibular sense would really, really appreciate sometimes being sat on a chair and having that sense of anchoring. And actually that makes a huge difference to their listening sometimes. And the third thing is adapting our self-talk, because we have this internal dialogue going on all the time. It doesn't mean we're mad, it just means we do talk to ourselves, don't we? And we tell ourselves, we try and preempt situations. And sometimes we tell ourselves that, we're going to be great. Sometimes that self-talk is really, really productive and proactive and great, because it says, do you know what? It's going to be tricky, but you can do that. And then sometimes we have negative self-talk. Oh my goodness, Monica, you're going to do this video and everyone's going to be asleep by slide 6. I try not to have that negative self-talk. I'll try the positive self-talk, that you're still with me and you're still shouting encouragement towards me to get me to the end, which would be great. Thank you. So those are the 3 things that we can do. Now, as we develop, there's a lot of input from our external environment into all of these 3 things. Our physical environment obviously comes from the people around us, but also the idea that we can actually choose to adapt that environment comes from the people around us as well. Developing that plan, building those executive functioning skills, being able to think clearly about, if I try this, this might happen, being open to new ideas and being able to talk to people about a plan that we might have is also something that comes from the environment that we're in. And that self-talk is huge. The self-talk that we give children as they're growing up is really, really important. The way we speak to them about certain things will actually tailor how they think about things, how they think about themselves. And we've done a lot of resources in the past. And if you go to our webpage, you'll find this resource about how to use praise positively. Because actually what we know is that sometimes when we overpraise people, what we're doing is we're praising the result and we're not praising the effort that went into that. And actually that's quite a negative thing. So have a look at that, perhaps after this video. Maybe we'll do a session on that a little bit later on. Okay, so what does self-regulation look like? Well, self-regulation looks like being able to resist an emotional outburst when something or someone upsets us, okay? Not being picked for something, not being first in the line, dropping our fork on the floor during dinner, having your mum packing your own sandwiches, or you getting your brother's sandwiches instead of the ones that you wanted. All of those things are the kind of things that can actually, for some children, be a big deal, but for other children, not so much of a big deal. Children for whom it's a big deal are the children that need to learn that self-regulation. Focusing on work when distractions are near. This is massive. I can't remember the last time it just doesn't happen. We go into classrooms all the time, and the vast majority of the children that we work with struggle with their attention and listening, struggle with being able to screen out what's going on around them. And even if it's really, really minute, even if it's a faint hum from a radiator, a car going past, a bird outside, or from a noisy child on another table, whatever it is, they really, really struggle, and they get stuck on it and they can't get back to what they were supposed to be doing. Holding back tears when we feel upset or hurt. This is not about suppressing our emotions, not at all, but it's also about having some sort of control over it, having some balance, having a bit of perspective about really, is it such a big deal? If you fall over and hurt your knee, yeah, of course it's okay to have a cry then, but you don't need to cry for a long time. You don't need to get yourself upset. You don't need to get completely breathless because you've grazed your knee. Your body will react to that. Your initial reaction is obviously shock and a bit of upset. And as we get older, we learn that that's, you know, the normal reaction is not to do that. So when we're babies, yes, we can fall over and hurt ourselves and cry for a little bit longer. But as we get older, we learn to change that and inhibit that reaction. And that's what self-regulation is. Delaying gratification. Understanding that perhaps the needs of other people might come before you, or understanding that actually it's okay to wait for something, waiting for something. Now that is a big thing, and I think that's something we really need to work on with lots of children, because a lot of children don't ever practice that. They don't ever have that chance to actually learn how to wait their turn, how to wait and not eat everything that's put in front of them straight away, perhaps, or understand that, you know, you don't have to have the best of everything straight away, that you can save up for things. All of those things that are difficult life lessons, but boy, are they important life lessons for as they grow older. Controlling the impulse to move or meet that physical need. So for those young children that we've got, maybe somebody who has got an issue with their vestibular sense, they find sitting on the floor a bit difficult, bring that, you know, those children that find that they've got to roll around maybe on the carpet and not actually even try to sit still when they've been asked to by their teacher. That's an issue, isn't it? Calming ourselves down when we're feeling anxious or worried. We're back to that self-talk. How positive is our self-talk? Do we talk positively to ourselves? Do we talk rationally and reasonably to ourselves? That's really, really a difficult one. And I think that's one that lots of people struggle with. And I think, you know, if I'm honest, I've struggled with that at some points in my life as well. So we've got to make sure that our children learn that. And they're only going to get that from that external environment. They get that from the people around them. Transitioning from one task to another independently is huge, and it's something we do a lot of work on in schools because there are lots of changes during the day. And like I said, going back to school this time, there are going to be even more changes to have to navigate this coming term. So that's a tricky one, and that's a difficult one. And understanding that when things change, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes change can be good. And if there is a small change, going back and anchoring them and reminding them of what hasn't changed. That thing's changed, but the rest of the things haven't changed at all. Okay, so why does it happen? Why do some children seem to manage much better than others? And why do some children really, really struggle with this? Well, what we know, what the research tells us and what Leah Cooper's tells us is that there isn't actually a direct link with IQ or with language ability. And often we get asked to come into schools to talk to children or to assess children where the school feel that it's a language disorder, there's a language difficulty that is explaining this behaviour. But actually it's not, because when we go and do the assessment, we work out that actually their language skills are really, really good. They just cannot regulate themselves. It can be impacted on by that co-regulator environment. So obviously, like I said, you can change the environment to make it better, but equally, you can change the environment to make it worse. And there are some cases of children who have had extreme trauma, neglect, or they've just had basically really, really, really poor modelling in their lives as well. And those are those sort of ACEs, that aversive childhood experience. It's an American term that's used quite a lot. Early experience and early development really, really can tailor that sensory profile. So if you think about a crying baby, when a baby cries, there are lots of things that we try to do to comfort that baby. I'm just going to make you a little bit bigger on my screen because I'm very aware, not that I want to make myself massive or anything, but I'm very aware that I'm looking a little bit small, so just bear with me a second, and I don't know whether that's going to work, but I'm going to try bring you down there a little bit. Okay, so yeah, so when a baby's crying, we do lots of things to try and comfort a baby. So what would we do? Well, the first thing we might do is perhaps use a bit of a sing-songy voice, a gentle voice to try and coax them. You know, there, everything's okay. And then we pick that baby up, we hold that baby close to us, and we stroke the baby's back. And we might use a soft fabric or a comforter that they're used to, their teddy or their thing that they like to rub across their face, a bit of muslin or something they used to use. We might feed them. We might give them some milk because we're trying to think of why is this baby crying. We might change the nappy because we think they're uncomfortable. We want to make them comfortable again. We'll rock with them. We'll do that gentle rocking motion, that tapping motion. We do a variety of different things to try and soothe that child down. And all of those experiences shape our sensory development. And that's why we develop. That's one of the reasons we develop that sensory nurturing, that need to And it's about those people that really just haven't moved on from that, haven't built that, haven't got from having to get that from other people to understanding that they can actually have that within themselves as well. There are also links with neurodiverse development. So there are some people who have got possibly an ASD diagnosis or have got some sort of neurodevelopmental difficulty or diagnosis that has an impact on that, because it's about how your brain is wired, isn't it? It's about that sort of storing of information and using that information, how we process sensory input, how we process that ability to self-help and to manage ourselves as well. And also, like I said before, children and young people are just still working themselves out sometimes. They're just still not quite there yet. They're still working it out. And that's okay. We'd expect that. And that's why we have that thing called the toddler, horrible toddler years, where the toddlers really are working themselves out. Not horrible toddler years, they're lovely toddler years, but you know what I mean. When they are, you know, crying over the least thing, getting very, very upset because they don't have the language skills to tell us why they're feeling a certain way. So they're using that behaviour. But also there's another side of that their sensory and their ability to manage their sensory environment is also having an impact on them as well. And children and young people have got less control over that environment, like we said. So, you know, there are lots of things we can control, and we can be working in a school and still control our environment. You know, I take water with me when I'm in a school because I know I'm going to have a drink when I want to. And years ago, water wasn't that freely available to children in schools. It's a relatively recent thing in the last sort of 10, 15 years, isn't it? So, you know, that kind of thing, that kind of impact that a child has on their own environment and actually knowing themselves and knowing the thing that's actually going to make a difference. So why do we need to teach you? What's it all about? What has school got to do with all of this? Well, there's loads of research, and it's been really interesting for me to do that, to have a look at this, because I found lots of information on this. One of the really good pieces of research is this one that we've got on screen at the moment, and that actually says that early education creates an important foundation for academic skills. Of course, early education is important, but social skills are actually far more predictive of outcomes into adulthood than early academics. I mean, that's quite incredible, isn't it? So it's hard to believe that, you know, what your child knows at the age of 5 could actually influence their future chances of success. But this study that was done in 2015 found that exactly that was the issue. And they discovered that the skills predict future success. It had nothing to do with reading or writing. Instead, they say that the child's social and emotional skills are what determine how likely your child, or how likely it is that your child's going to go to college or end up in jail. They actually did a sort of a 19-year study. It was quite incredible, really, with a very, very large cohort of American kids. So that's quite compelling evidence on its own. The link is on there. Please go and have a look at that research, because it's very interesting. There's other bits as well. Self-regulation abilities have a stronger correlation with school readiness than IQ or entry-level reading or math. It says math because it's an American piece of research. I had to put this in because we're English, obviously. Let me move myself around because I'm in the wrong place. I'll just move myself up over here a bit. Okay. Research shows that teachers can have a positive effect on students' self-regulation skills, so you can have an impact. So particularly for those kids who have had a difficult start in life, you can still have an impact. You see, sometimes we hear in schools, you know, well, what can you do? What can you do? You can't change what goes on at home, but you can have a huge impact on that child's ability to regulate themselves. Even though it doesn't feel like you can, but you actually can. And higher academic achievement is more likely when interventions include self-regulation components. So it should be part of what you're doing every day. It's not only is it an important thing to do, it should actually be part of what goes on in school all the time. So we already do a lot of things. We've already got a lot of resources available for you guys. I'll move myself down here a little bit. So these resources, the Now Next board and the choosing boards, are really, really good for helping young people when they need to follow the lead of an adult, when they are struggling to actually move on from something. That transition we talked about, struggling with those transitions. We've got really, really nice visual resources that you can use, where you can put your pictures on those to indicate what is the now task, what's going to be happening next. And then giving them that chance to, once they've developed that now a next ability, moving on then to giving them 2 options of what they're doing next. and that they can choose one of the two options. Of course, it's a managed choice because the two options have to be choices that you're happy with and are appropriate. But even so, it's giving them that idea that I have some control of my environment. And that's a really, really important thing for our young people to learn. This is a really fantastic resource that I use all of the time. And this is our Plan A, Plan B resource. And this is really great for managing those situations when there has been a change. And if you've got kids coming back into school, I think I suggest all of our kids have this resource going on at the moment, because there will be changes to the rules in schools and we've got to be aware of those, haven't we? We've got to be on it. So we've got our Plan A is where we are, what we're doing, who we're going to be with, when we're going to be doing something. So where we're going to be, which room, that our kids are probably coming back to a different classroom, what's the lesson going to be about, who is going to be in my bubble, so who's in my bubble and who is my teacher, when are we going to have breaks, when are we going to be allowed to the toilet, when are we going to be allowed to do X, Y and Z. But if something changes, you can flip the page over and you can be ready for that change with Plan B, which I think is fantastic. Our problem planning resource, we've done a bit of work on it over the break out of school. We haven't been on break, we've just not been in school. And we have made some scenarios to go with our problem planning resource, because we felt that sometimes children really needed that extra support when thinking about gauging a problem, getting some sort of idea of balance about a problem and understanding really in the grand scheme of things, is it a big problem or is it a small problem? So we've got a group of colour-coded resources. You can see they're coded by the level of problem, and then you've got the chance for the child to actually do a little bit of a sorting exercise, or you could make it harder and not have the colour coding. It's up to you how you decide to do it. But I really love that resource and it's a really, really helpful one to use. This is a resource that I made for a young man who did not want to go to his RE lesson. And he was voting in a very, very specific way about not going to his RE lesson, with his feet really, that he didn't want to go and he was not going to be going. What we did was we said, okay, you don't want to go to RE. Let's think about what it is about RE. That is what is the issue? And so this is just the first page. There were lots and lots of different situations, but one of our situations was walking to the lesson, which is a long way from his base in his high school. His base was where he felt safe, and it was a long way to walk, and he was worried about that. There were lots of other sensory issues about that: noise, echoing, loudness of other children, smell of the dinner room because he had to pass the dinner room. I get that one. All of those things he was finding really, really difficult to regulate and to understand and manage. And what we were able to do was actually identify that he wasn't going to explode about it, but he did feel really, really anxious about it. He doesn't like the crowds and he's worried about being late for the lesson. So kind of two elements to that. So what was our plan? Well, his plan was that he was going to be able to wear his headphones. The school said he could wear his headphones through the school corridor. That was going to be okay. Their earbuds, he's got long hair, no one could see them. It was fine. It was perfectly appropriate. And that the base staff were going to remind him when he needed to go and to make sure that he got there on time. So it was that gentle prompting rather than that very managed, right, we're going to the lesson sort of thing. And that worked for him. And it was a really useful thing for him to do. So that's just an example of how that one works. And then we've made another one that is on our website, and that was particularly for COVID. And that was done at the very, very early days. And a lot of the questions that we were being asked by young people, am I going to catch it? People are going to die. I'm really worried about it. And actually giving them a chance to have some concrete stuff that they can do to help to manage their emotions about the whole situation. And again, if you go to our website, we've got a whole section on COVID, and we've got lots and lots of information on there about how to support anxious children at the current moment in time. There is one heck of a storm going on outside. So if you hear that rumbling of thunder, it's not my stomach, it is the outside and it's the rain. So we are here to talk about zones of regulation. So we're going to do that and how we implement it. So I first came across this intervention, I think it was about 2 years ago. And as I said, I was lucky enough to go to the training in October last year. And it's something that I've used, and it's something I've used with children from the age of 5 up to 25, because I do go in and work at local higher education, further education colleges at Heart of Worcestershire College, and I will be working at Pershore and Evesham College next year. So it's something that I felt was actually very, very good and very useful to use across the board and with a range of students. So you can adapt it so it's really, really visual and useful to use with people that perhaps have got learning difficulties or haven't got a great grasp of English, so it's good for EAL children. But also equally, you can use it with quite intelligent children who are very cognitively able and who are able to actually discuss their feelings in a bit more depth. So it's very, very adaptable, I think. What Leah Cooper says is that it isn't really a preschool resource. However, she said you could implement and introduce the colours. So if you've got a school that's got a nursery or an early years section, you could introduce the colours and introduce the feelings within those colours and perhaps do a bit of checking in and just get that going to start with, just getting it as part of the sort of school narrative, really. So what are the zones of regulation? Right, well, it is a cognitive-based, behaviour-based curriculum. So it's about thinking about how you feel, how you behave, and what is the impact of that behaviour on other people. It's designed to help children learn how to regulate their emotions independently. So instead of being so overly reliant on their co-regulators or actually not seeking help at all, it's about getting them to realise they can seek some help, but equally they can do an awful lot for themselves. And actually there is a win for them, there's a gain for them in doing that. It teaches students to recognise and identify their feelings, to understand that I am feeling like this, that I'm not just in this like mad whirly spin. I am actually feeling annoyed. I'm feeling jealous. I'm feeling proud. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling engaged. There are lots and lots of emotions out there with lots and lots of different labels. But what it does is it gives us a bit of a shortcut for it because it gives us the zones to pop those labels into. It teaches students to learn how their behaviour affects all the people around them. And actually, when your behaviour is affecting other people, they treat you differently. That is fact, okay? If your behaviour makes people feel scared, they will avoid you. If your behaviour makes people feel worried, they will avoid you. If your behaviour makes them feel irritated, they will avoid you. So for those children who struggle with friendships, who don't understand why people don't want to be their friends, this could also be a really good tool for them as well. And it equips students with the tools they need to regulate their actions. It gives them the tools, it gives them something to do. It isn't done to them. It's not a judgment made by the adults. It's something they can learn and something they can adapt and use for themselves. Because our job as educators and as speech and language therapists is to allow these young people to develop independent skills. I'll just move myself up a little bit out of the way of the words. Excuse me for a second. And what it is. So it's a teaching school. It's holistic. So it's about everything. It goes into lots of different areas. I mean, it's not just a speech and language therapy thing. It's a mental health thing. It's an occupational therapy thing. It's an educational thing. It's a parenting thing. It's an everything thing. It's a thinking framework. It gives us a framework. Everyone is happy when there's a plan, and it gives us a plan for our thinking. It allows us to attach things to a framework to make sense of it. It's a way to nurture development of social and emotional skills. It just introduces the topic a lot of the time and gets the ball rolling on that and allows a bit of introspection. It allows us to actually think about ourselves and plan for ourselves. And it's a way to create that consistent language across the settings. And this is a really, really key part of all of this because this is completely pointless unless it's taken on board by everybody. So it's about making that language part of the school, part of the educational establishment that we're in, and also part maybe of home and of the other environment that the young person might live in as well. What it is not a zone board, okay? And that's the problem, isn't it? We use zone boards a lot in this country and they don't in America. And it's unfortunate that she called it the zones of regulation because I get why she did. But the problem is that people think it's about zoning. It's about making a judgment about that person's behaviour. You are in the red. Oh dear, you've done that. You've been nasty to so-and-so, right, we're putting you in red. We're making a judgment about you. It's not that. It is not a discipline model. It's not about, taking out, or activating any kind of disciplinary procedure. It is not about that. It's for the benefit of the child. It is not for the benefit of the adult or for the school. It is not a reactive behaviour approach. It's not about how you react to your behaviour. It's not about the other people. It is about the child and the individual. It is not a way to help make that person feel shameful or to actually kind of encourage, which normally would encourage negative behaviour, because if people feel ashamed of themselves, they start to feel negatively about themselves and then they actually lose motivation and they give up even trying. And as somebody who works with young adults, I can tell you that happens. I see the result of that all the time. And it's not punitive. It's not about, you know, categorizing people. It's not about judging people. It's not about putting people in boxes. It's about letting that person understand themselves and understand that that feeling they're feeling at the moment is in this box, but there's something I can do about it if that feeling is not right for the context that we're in. Okay. So how do you use it? Well, there's lots of ways of using it. You can use it as you should really use it always as that universal intervention, that it's part of what everybody does in the school. Let me just move this up down. So it's part of the vernacular. It's part of this, you know, what everyone talks about in school. It's used in assemblies. It's used in every part of the school day. It's used by everybody. And it can be used as a targeted intervention, whole class. I mean, there's so many things you could do with it. If you were doing a whole class intervention, I think it's fantastic for whole class. And I've done it with whole classes before, and it's been brilliant. But obviously you could do it with a selected group of children. The only thing I would say is sometimes it's nice to have some positive role models within that group. It's difficult to do if everyone has a social communication difficulty. So sometimes it's nice to drop a few other people in. If you can't do that, then the adults are part of that group. Everyone's part of the group. And for very, very specific young people who need an individualised plan, then it's perfect for them. But I would hope that it would also be part of a group and that the universal thing would be happening as well at the same time. So it's about doing all of it, really. So here are the zones. These are the zones. There are 4 zones. So we have 4 zones: the blue zone, the green zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone. These are visuals that she uses in her book, which is there. That is the Zones of Regulation book. So I'm going to do something really scary now and stop sharing and do a big screen so I can actually show you what the book looks like. There we go. So that is the book. That is Leah Cooper's book. I think it's about £28 or something on Amazon, I think, at the moment. But again, we can give you a link for that. That's what the book looks like. It's actually not too bad. It's got lots and lots of lesson plans. It's very, very, it's quite prescriptive, actually, and you can follow it. But what I really like about it is it gives you lots of ideas of how to have an impact on your universal stuff. And at the back, it comes with a little disk drive that you can put in your computer. A little thing pops out. Be careful because they break really easily. And all the resources are on there. I'm not a fan of the resources, I've got to say. I don't really like the pictures. I think you could make nicer pictures, and I know that you can make nicer pictures because you're very creative. So the idea behind it, the text is great, but I wouldn't worry too much about the resources. I don't think they're fantastic at all. Right, let's get back to sharing again and get back to our screen. Okay, so back again. So those are our zones. We have got the rest area, the blue zone. Blue zone is about being not necessarily quiet, but still. It's a low energy zone. It's a zone where what you're doing doesn't require a lot of bodily movement. So you can see we've got some suggested things on there: bored, tired, sad, disappointed, sick, depressed, shy. That very sort of, you know, or that wonderful word that has been generated by lots of teenagers called meh. You know, that sort of meh, I don't really feel like doing very much today, okay? The green zone is the zone where you are happy, you're positive, you're thinking, you're thankful, you're proud, you're calm, you're content, and you're ready to learn, and you're in the group, and you're there, you're present. So not massively active, but equally not sitting with your head on your hands in the lesson. Slow, the yellow zone. That's where things start to change. Your body's starting to increase. Your thought pattern is starting to pick up. You're starting to get a little bit agitated. You're starting to move a little bit. You might be shifting position. And it's really interesting. You can actually spot children when they're just moving into that yellow zone in lots of different periods in the school day. Often after lunch, often after break times when they're coming from the lesson, where the expectation is they're going to go right from yellow back to green immediately, without any support. And that is difficult, isn't it? It's so difficult. They've been outside playing with their friends, excited, or something might have slightly upset or annoyed them, and then they've got to come back in, and the expectation is you are going to be green because I said so, not because I've made any changes, not because I've done any adjustments, not because I've given you an opportunity to think what is it that helps you get to green. It's because the teacher says you're going to be green, and that sometimes is the issue, isn't it? And then we've got the red zone. The red zone is that zone, unfortunately, we do see sometimes in schools where people just get completely beyond, you know, being able to control themselves. They have lost control of themselves. They are upset, they are angry, and that comes out in physical things. They can be biting, kicking, punching, throwing, you know, crying, howling, or laughing maniacally, or agitated, or, you know, just absolutely out of it, completely excited. So there's lots and lots of different behaviours that attach to the emotions, that attach to the zones. There's 3 sort of elements to that. Okay. So, whoops, I'm hoping. Oh, I thought for a moment that it had broken. Oh, thank goodness it hadn't. So we're going to talk about the blue zone. The blue zone is that low state of alertness. This is that rest area. I think we all recognise the boy with his hand on his, I'll just move myself out of the way, with his head on his hands, low energy. Often at the end of a day, midway through a term maybe, towards the end of a term, by Friday, maybe Monday morning because they're not good sleepers or they often have very busy weekends. There's all sorts of reasons why these things happen, but it's that bored, tired, sad, down in the dumps, disappointed, sick, depressed, shy. All of those things are blue zone behaviours. So what I've done is I have made you guys a little board that has got some of those suggested behaviours on there. This is not prescriptive at all. I don't have it there, but it's on there. And you're going to have a copy of that. So we've got what the blue zone is, and you've got all of your behaviours there. So the other thing I've made for you is one of these. As you can see, it's on your screen. And the idea is that you can use the previous slide and this slide, laminate them, and this can be your board. The previous slide you cut out, make sure you cut within the line so you don't have the blue line, because that's going to give you a bit of a giveaway. And it's an idea, you could do a little sort of like mixing and matching exercise of, right, we're learning about the zones. What is the blue zone? What does it mean to be blue? And getting that teaching going and putting all those emotions out there. And it's nice to have visual emotions, particularly with younger children and with older people as well, because it gives you an extra bit of information. And actually being able to match that emotion to the correct zone is a really, really nice thing to do. The reason I laminate it as well is sometimes the kids will think of a zone or think of a behaviour or a feeling that I've not thought of. So I can write it on here as well and go, oh, great idea, that's a great one. Yeah, let's stick that one on there, that's fantastic. And then you can develop that and you can say, right, now we're going to practice acting it out. How do we look? How do we look when we're feeling bored? How do we look when we're feeling sad? How do we look when we're feeling, you know, just shy, don't want to talk to people, head down? Talking about what our body's doing, what our head's doing, what our face is doing, what our voices are doing, what we might say, what situations we might be in. And whether or not it's an okay situation to be like that. My go-to one is always, first thing in the morning on a Monday morning, I am blue because I am tired. I'm often very tired on a Monday and it takes me a while to get going. So before I have my coffee, I need to realise and recognise that I'm blue, and then I have a coffee to get me to green because that's where I need to be when I get to school. So as we move on, the green zone. So when we're in lessons, this is a good zone to be in. This is the optimal zone to be in a lesson, okay? This is not the optimal zone to be in all of your life because nobody is like that. I am not green all the time, neither are you guys, because we're not robots, we're human beings with sensory needs who are impacted on by our environment. So the green zone is that ideal state of alertness, just about the right enough energy, getting started easily, being able to do things perhaps more independently, being able to get on with it, being motivated, happy, positive, thankful, proud, calm, content, focused, and ready to learn. Oh my goodness, isn't that what we want? But we're not going to get that. And we've got to be realistic about that. And then actually, during a whole lesson, you're going to get a very small amount of that, but that's okay. If you get some of that, that's still okay, okay? And the same thing, I've done a widget card for the green zone and a blank one that you can do that game with as well. So what I would suggest you do is maybe just pick a zone to start with, and then you can mix another zone in. So do two quite very different zones. So maybe do red and green, and maybe do blue and yellow, and then mix them all together. And just, you know, you've probably got about 6 weeks of activities out of all of that really by the time you're finished. The yellow zone, that's when your body starts to change, you're starting to get a little bit more alert, you start to move a little bit quicker, you're starting to feel a bit agitated, a bit more energy, you're feeling a little bit anxious about something, excited, wiggly, annoyed, frustrated, worried, embarrassed, confused, nervous. You're just starting to change. And this is the really crucial element, isn't it? That time when you're starting to change, how do you stop it escalating to red? And how do you manage it? How do you temper it? If you're at a theme park, it's okay. If it's Christmas morning, it's okay. If you're in the right context, it's okay. But if you need to move, what have you got to do? We're going to come to that later. And again, recognising our zones again in yellow, and a blank one for the yellow zone board as well. And then we come to red, that extremely high state. Most people see red as a negative colour, that stop colour, and she uses the stop sign for that because that's about when your energy has completely gone beyond what is controllable. And it's not a good state to be in a lot, is it? To have lost control of yourself is not a good place to be. It's upsetting for you. It's exhausting. It's worrying for the people around you. So it's not a great place to be all of the time, but it's not a bad place to be some of the time. Okay, so it's about that extremely high state of alertness. It's about that high energy, difficulty working, upset, angry, aggressive, mad, elated, terrified, out of control. Out of control, it's like a big, big, big emotion. And so again, we've got our boards that you can play the game with. Okay, so now we're going to stop. I think I've given you quite a lot to think about. So what I want you to do now is, I'm just trying to get to my right page, which is along here somewhere. Hang on, bear with me a minute. I want you to think about the zones and think about the zones and what we've said about each zone. And I'm going to pause the video. I want you to pause the video to think about those zones. Think about your day today. Just think about today. Can you map your zones for today? Could you draw a graph using the full colour pens and say, well, at 9 o'clock, this is my colour I was in. And then at 10 o'clock, I got to this. And at 11 o'clock, I got to this. And just thinking about how your zones might have changed throughout the day and what had an impact on you. So how did you feel when your alarm clock went off this morning? Or you were nudged by your partner, or the dog barked, or your children came in to wake you up, or your baby cried in the middle of the night. How were you feeling then? How did you feel at your first coffee? How was that? Did the coffee help? Helps me. But how did it help you? Is it something you can do? Or did you go for a run? Or did you have breakfast? Or did you talk to somebody? Did you say hello to somebody on your way to work? And how was your journey to work? What was the traffic like? How was that? Were you okay? Were you anxious about it? Did you have to go to the shop on the way and that was a bit busy? All of those things will have an impact on your day. And it'll be really interesting for you to see how your zones change throughout that time and how many different zones you're in. Okay, so we're going to pause now. Okay, so we've paused our video. And now I want you to look back at what you've drawn and what you've thought about your different zones throughout the day. Did you see a pattern? Do you see a colour that came up quite a lot? Was there a lot of red? Isn't that interesting? Was there a lot of yellow? Was there a lot of blue because it was the morning? Did you notice the morning had a bit of blue in it and then by the afternoon it got better? Or did you notice that you're somebody who wakes up, you know, yellowy green and then goes to blue by the evening, by the afternoon? It's interesting, isn't it? And what did you do at these points of change to regulate? Did you do anything or did the situation change for you that you had no control over? Did you need someone to help you or were you able to do it by yourself? So you can think about it, think about yourselves, and this is another activity that you can do with the children. So once they're at a point where they understand the zones, they understand which emotions go in each zone, then you can get to the point where they can start to map their zones and actually thinking about a day maybe, or a lesson, or a week, or a year, whatever it takes. See how that goes. Okay, so next slide. There are no bad zones. There aren't. All the zones are valid. It's not about staying out of the red. It really isn't. The red zone is a helpful zone. It's a really helpful zone sometimes, and it's absolutely the correct zone to be in. There are no bad zones. Just it could be that you're using the wrong behaviour in the wrong context, the wrong behaviour at the wrong time. Okay, so you are being chased by a bear. What zone would you be in? I'm hoping you would say the red zone because that's when you are running, hopefully running away from that bear. You do not want to be around that bear. Red is the place you want to be. You need to be, you know, I know you're not supposed to scream, but I probably would. That's probably why I'd get eaten by a bear. But you're supposed to be calm, aren't you? You're supposed to be, but your body, your fight and flight would take over. And you probably would run. I would, to be honest. What about when you win the lottery? That day that you win the lottery, your numbers finally come through and you get £1 million put in your bank account. Oh my goodness me. I think you'd react. And I think I absolutely know that I would be red. Initially at that point of finding out, I'd be like, woohoo, yes, I can do it. I can do all the things I've ever wanted to do. How fantastic, marvellous. Can't wait for the shops to open and I'm there with my £1 million. Because I'm not sure Amazon can cope with my £1 million spend at the moment, but yes. We'd be feeling really elated, we'd be like, our heart would be racing, we wouldn't have control, we'd be sweating, we'd be palpitations, we wouldn't know what to do next, we would be caught in a bit of a funk, not knowing where to go, we might be a little bit paralysed because we wouldn't know what to say or what to do. But yes, we would be in a very, very heightened state, and we would feel that we didn't have a great deal of control of our bodies. Okay. What about this one? What about your teenager or the teenager in your life empties the dishwasher without being asked to do it? Let's just hold on to that thought for a moment, shall we? If that happened in my house, I would be feeling very similarly to how I would if I'd won the lottery, because it would be probably as likely to happen. So I would be, wow, that's amazing. I'd give them a hug. They would get a lot of reinforcement for doing that. It would be great, wouldn't it? But yeah, so there's lots of reasons and lots of situations where being read is actually okay. It would be expected. I think my teenager would be a little bit, oh my God, what's going on? But they know me. They know what I'm like. So it probably wouldn't be that unexpected, actually. They would expect me to behave that way to them. So it's about getting that balance right, isn't it? It's about using the behaviour that's expected in that context at that right time. Okay, so now we're going to talk about those expected, unexpected behaviours. Now, I hear a lot in school the term appropriate, inappropriate, and it makes me a little bit sad, I have to say sometimes, because what you're doing is you're making a judgment on that behaviour. You're saying that when you're saying, you know, that was inappropriate, the child is hearing, I am inappropriate. Okay, so it's really important that we don't put labels on the child, that we're talking about the behaviour. But and so moving on from that is that who decides what's appropriate and what's inappropriate? I think it's better and nicer to use expected versus unexpected, because then you're talking sort of out of the situation. You're not in that situation where you're in conflict with a child and saying what you did was wrong. What you're saying is that that behaviour was unexpected. That behaviour was something that I didn't expect to see. When we're in school, we like people, we expect people to sit down and get on with their work. We hope they're going to get on with their work. We expect them to be excited out in the playground, but when you're in a test, you've got to really be quiet and be getting on with your work. And when you've been told by your teacher to sit down, you really need to be doing that. So when you got up and shouted, that was unexpected. That unexpected made me feel in a certain way. So expected behaviours are those behaviours that make us feel happy. We expect them. There's nothing unusual about it. It makes us feel happy, relaxed, comfortable, calm, included. And I think the problem is that we don't talk to children about actually the impact their behaviour has on other people. But when we do, we talk about it in a very sort of judgmental kind of way instead of an observational sort of way. So unexpected behaviour, that often makes people feel sad. It makes them feel frightened of you. It makes people feel uncomfortable around you when you behave like that. When you shouted really loudly, it made me feel really anxious, and it makes me feel a little bit excluded, that I don't want to be beside you. Okay? That's really a key thing, because I can't tell you how many young people I've worked with, particularly some people on the autistic spectrum, who didn't appreciate that, who didn't realise the impact that actually their behaviour had. Now, that's not just it. There's more to this, because then you go on to think about, well, expected versus unexpected behaviours. Expected behaviours, when we see them, they encourage the other person, because they make them feel like that, they encourage the other person to say hello to me. They encourage, when I behave in an expected way, people listen to me. When I behave in an expected way, people want to be with me. And people include me in what they're doing, in their conversation or in their activity. And then when that happens, that makes me feel happy. It makes me feel relaxed. It makes me feel comfortable, calm, included, confident, and motivated to do it all again. To see that actually this expected behaviour stuff really works in my favour. It's something that's really positive. It's something I want a bit more of this. I want to feed on this. This is a nice feeling. Nobody likes being upset. Nobody likes getting upset and crying and losing it and getting to red. It's an uncomfortable place for lots of people to be. So actually getting them to realise that actually when they behave in an expected way, there are some real positives for them. Because the alternative is, when you behave in an unexpected way, people will avoid you. They won't want to listen to you. They will tell me off. They will nag me. They exclude me from their conversation, their activity, and that makes me feel lonely. It makes me feel frustrated. It makes me feel ashamed. It makes me feel resentful. And it makes me feel really isolated from everybody else. That's a horrible feeling. Those are not positive feelings. And that's not something I want to happen. The problem is that this sometimes is the default behaviour for a lot of young people, and they haven't learned there's an alternative, and they haven't learned that there's a tool, and they think it's all about them, but actually it's not. It's actually about what they can do to help themselves. So I want you to have a little think about what your expected behaviour is when. I'm thinking about you as adults. What is it? What behaviour would you expect when maybe you've slept in? Okay. If I sleep in and I've got to be at work or got to be at an appointment at a certain time, I would wake up with a jolt, feeling anxious. I'd probably be in the yellow, I think. I really do think I'd be in the yellow. Some people not so much. Some people might not be so bothered about that. But for me, I definitely would be quite anxious about that. I don't think I'd be red, but I'd be red if I slept in and then lost my car keys. That would be a red moment. There'd be a bit of shouting going on probably in my house. If I lost half a stone, oh my God, I would be so red. I think, but I'd hold it in. I'd be feeling red, but my behaviours wouldn't be red. I'd be holding it in, I think, a little bit. So if I was in the queue at Slimming World and she told me I'd lost half a stone, I'd be very happy about that. I think you're allowed to shout and cheer at Slimming World, but I wouldn't be shouting it to everybody as I walk down the high street afterwards. You're at the doctor's surgery, there's something wrong, you're worried about something, you might be feeling a bit yellow about it, or you might be just going for a routine appointment. So again, the context changes just a little bit. If it's something that you're not so worried about, you're just getting your passport signed or something, it's not a problem, is it? You're in a staff meeting. Well, we've all been in some staff meetings that are scintillating, and I'm hoping that some of you will play this at your staff meeting and that your staff will be absolutely in the green zone and it'll all be fine. But I would suspect some of you will be in the blue zone, and some of you are probably in the blue zone listening to me now because I've gone on for a little bit and you're feeling a little bit tired and you're thinking, oh my God, when is this woman going to stop? It will be happening soon, I promise you. You're out with your friends. If it's going well, you're having a great time, you're probably yellow because you're excited and it's wonderful. If it's going really well and you're ecstatic, you're red. If you're out with somebody and they're not very interesting and you've got stuck beside them, then you might be feeling a bit blue. So you can see how all of these things change. It's not just about that context. There's lots of different reasons why things can change. So I want you to look at that in a little while and have a little think about it. Now I want you to think about children, the children we work with. How would our children behave? What would we expect them to do when they have slept in? So for some young people, when it's not their job to get them to school on time, that is mum or dad's job. They don't care when they've slept in because they're not really that bothered about school. They're a bit ambivalent about it. But for some children, they would be very anxious about the timekeeping thing. Getting picked for the football team is probably for some 8-year-old boys, it's the equivalent of winning the lottery, isn't it? So that could be the same for them. They're ill and they're at the doctors. Do you think a lot of our young people that we work with that have challenges with self-regulation would be able to inhibit themselves if they're in the doctors and they've got a stomachache and they're in the doctor's surgery waiting to go in and it's taken a long time and the doctor's running late with their appointments? Do you think they'd be able to handle it? It's Christmas Eve. That's a big one, isn't it? Their mum has bought the wrong tomato sauce for some people. That would be enough to send them to red. Or they're in a lesson. What colour are they going to be in that lesson? You'd like them to be green, but I would suspect the majority of the children that we work with are going to be all of the colours, perhaps all at once. In fact, possibly for some of our children, green's the least likely colour they're going to be. It's playtime. They're outside playing with their friends. It's all going well. And even when it's all going well, they're not going to be green. No one's green and focused. They're excited. They're playing. So they're going to be yellow. Very few children are green at playtime. They're going to be one of those other colours. They're talking in front of the class. That's a big one, isn't it? Particularly for children who've got speech and language difficulties, but also for children who have got fluency issues as well. That's a big one. And a lot of those children could be feeling yellow and feeling red, but doing a really good job of inhibiting that and showing that they're not feeling like that. And they're talking to their teacher about an issue with another child in the class. That can be a big one, can't it? Because they're trying to get their point across and maybe they're feeling they're not being listened to or whatever. So think about the zones that those children might be in. Have a little think for a moment about that. Maybe pause the video if you want to. And just have a little think. Maybe just if you've got a paper copy of this, you could actually just write red, blue, green, yellow next to. Or if you're a bit like me and you've got all the different colour pens, you could tick them. Gosh, what does that say? But yes, you could. Okay, so here's another situation, and this is another resource that you could use, and I use quite a bit, is having some scenarios for those kids who really understand where they are, understand the zones, but they're now trying to think about context and they're thinking about expected, unexpected behaviours. I've made you some scenarios that you can discuss with kids, but it's best if you can do that as a group. If you can do that, yeah, as a group of young people, but also with some adults moderating. So more than one adult is probably preferable, I think, in this situation. Let me just find my notes for that one. Okay, so yeah. So this activity is going to be used once you're sure they've got a good understanding of zones and are about to move on to what is expected, unexpected behaviours. And these scenarios can be used to facilitate that intervention to help children think about expected, unexpected behaviours. And you can use them, like I said, in a small group or in a whole class. Because what you really want is you want the consensus to be probably what is the agreed opinion, what most people would think X, Y or Z. So what I've done in the past is I've labelled zones in the corners of the room, and we've used the cards in the middle, and we all pick the card up. No one reacts, you've just got to read the card out, and then you go 3, 2, 1, and the people have got to run to the corner of the room, or whichever zone is appropriate for that. You could do that, or you could do, if you've got older young people or children, you could have an expected, unexpected card. So you go 3, 2, 1, and you've got to pick up, is it expected or is it unexpected behaviour? And then everyone looks around and goes, oh, so and so thought this, that's interesting. Now what you don't do is you don't say, no, you were wrong, you said unexpected. So when you were at a funeral, you're at a funeral and somebody laughed, that's not expected behaviour. That's something that people would find very difficult and uncomfortable about. But people might be saying it perhaps because they think they're being funny or whatever. But you wouldn't make a judgment on that. You go, well, that's interesting, because most people thought that would be unexpected. Because when we're at a funeral, how do most people feel? And then you get a chance to talk about it in a non-judgmental way. And instead of giving attention to that behaviour where the person's picked the wrong one, what you're doing is actually giving attention to people that actually picked the one that was sensible. And soon, hopefully, you get them to sort of come to your side, hopefully. That's one of my tricks that I use. So there we go. We've got lots of different scenarios, and then you'd have your set of scenario cards. You might have your what would you do, whiteboards, etc. And then you have your zone pictures as well. So always have the zone pictures up so everyone can be reminded of what the zones are. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm asking you to pause, because I want you to have a little think about yourself over the last 3 months. It's been a tough 3 months, has it not? And I think we've all hit a lot of the zones in all sorts of bizarre ways, to be honest with you. Can you recognise times that you've been in certain zones, but you might have used behaviour that was perhaps unexpected for other people? And how did you feel about it when it happened? So maybe you were a bit worried about COVID and you broke down and cried in front of somebody, or you were very open with somebody, or maybe you got cross with somebody because you're very agitated and worried about COVID. How did you feel after that happened? Did you feel remorse? Did you feel a bit ashamed? Did you feel a little bit, oh gosh, what are they going to think about me now? I'm really, really sorry, I shouldn't have done that. How did you deal with that? Did you go back to it and make reparations? Did you make it better, or have you left it? Maybe you've got to come back to that later on. And thinking about what were the triggers, what were the patterns, what were the triggers for that behaviour, and did you manage it by yourself, or did your partner have to go, well, hang on a minute, that was a little bit out of order, that wasn't right, and did you come to some sort of solution about that? Then secondly, what I want you to do is I want you to think about some of the children that you might support. Maybe pick a specific child that you might be thinking of. You're normally thinking about one child all the way through these videos, aren't you? So think about their behaviour throughout the school term. And, you know, what was it like throughout the term? What's it like throughout the week? What's it like throughout the day? What's it like throughout a lesson? Or even just a small activity? Is there a difference? Are there any patterns? Can you see what might be a trigger? What's possibly going on? And is it to do with tiredness? Is it to do with hunger? Is it to do with sort of lack of regulation, that self-talk? Maybe it's because they're unconfident and they're worried that other people are better than them. There's all sorts of reasons why it might be, but I want you to think about what you think, because you know these children better than anybody. What do you think might be happening there? And are they relying on you to regulate? And are you regulating without them even asking? Are you opening it up? Is it part of a discussion that you have, or are you taking over? That's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think we do over-regulate sometimes. Have they developed any self-regulation skills that have been successful? Have you noticed anything that they've done differently that's really quite working out for them? And it could even be that they walk away from a situation. If that's helping them, that helps them. If they go off and do something that helps them, they go and play with some blue tack. They go and play with, sort the pens in the right colour order, something that helps them to distract them, that's something that they're using, that's fine. Or are they using behaviour that's actually not helpful? Are they going to red, staying in red, and it's all just... And actually what's happening is they're going to red, they're kicking off, they get, which is a horrible term, isn't it? But I'm sure you appreciate what I'm saying. Their behaviour is becoming quite massive. They're then removed from the classroom and put somewhere quiet. Now, if we put that quiet time in, maybe you'd recognise they've got to yellow, or maybe when they'd recognise they got to yellow and they said, you know what, I need a break, maybe we'd have stopped them going to red to start with, wouldn't we? So it's interesting, isn't it, how to sort of watch that behaviour and see where it goes. Somebody is deciding to rev up a motorbike outside now, so I do apologise for that. So pause and have a little bit of a think. Okay, so what zone are you in right now, do you think? Where are you? There's lots of things. There's lots of things you can use when you go back to school for that sort of general check-in of zones. And I'm really kind of worried about sometimes using zone check-in advice, because I think sometimes it's overused, and again it can be used in a bit of a punitive way, because what we want is for everyone to be honest. We don't want everyone to come in and go, yeah, I'm green, everyone's green, everything's great, because that would not be true, would it? The really important thing is for the adults in the environment to be really honest as well, and to say, do you know what, if you were stuck in traffic on the way to work, you were probably feeling a bit yellow, maybe red. If you lost your car keys this morning, I'd definitely be red. If you had a late night the night before, you were up working till really late, or you were watching a film for too long, you're feeling blue. When they hear that an adult can feel in those different zones, and then that adult says, but you know what, I'm feeling a little bit blue, but I'm going to have a glass of water, that's going to help me. That's going to make me feel a little bit better. When they hear you use those strategies, what you're doing is modelling that great use of using a strategy, understanding yourself, using the strategy to move to the zone that you need to be in. We're all going to try and get to green, aren't we? Because we're in a lesson, and when we're in the lesson, we're going to try and get to our green, okay? And we're all going to try and do that ourselves. But as you can see, there are lots of different examples on there, and there's a really good Facebook page that you can go to where you can find examples, real life examples that you can use as well. Okay, so there are lots and lots of different ways that you can increase and decrease activity. So you can use learning breaks, you can go for a walk, you can drink water, you can make a plan, you can stretch and you can breathe, you can eat something, and you can distract. So going back to our first one of the first slides that we talked about our sensory profiling. That's what we're doing, isn't it? We are feeding our sensory need. We're working on our sensory issues and trying to work out what it is that's going to help us in that situation, because we're starting to know ourselves a bit better. So what I've done now is I have made a resource for you to use as well. I'm going to go to me being big again, because I'm going to show you something that I've bought that I think is really good. But we're going to try and make you a sort of noddy version. But this is, if anyone wants to go and buy this, as you can see, you can get this on Amazon. I do it on Amazon Prime, so you can get it in 24 hours, and I think it's about £21. It's called the Therapeutic Treasure Deck of Grounding, Soothing, Coping and Regulating Cards. There's a series of these cards, but this is quite a good one. And all the cards, there's tons of them. There's loads of cards. But what I really like is what it's doing is it's giving choices, because it's really difficult to think of the tools that might be appropriate. And also it's really hard not to end up, without realising it, to actually enforce the tools that you use that are helpful for you, but aren't really helpful for the child that we're working with. Because as I said at the beginning, everybody is different. So I have made a series of cards that we can use when we are in certain zones, and how we can get out of those zones if the context is wrong, if it's not the right time to be in that zone, okay? So let's take, for example, the blue zone, then the quiet sleepy zone, the low energy zone, okay? So this is going to be a challenge. I've put blue tack on the back of these, so we're going to see how this works. So I have got, on here, we've got things I can do when I am feeling, okay? So when I am feeling, or when I am in the blue zone, these are things that I can do. You can see we've got things that are successful. God, I'm trying to work out. Yeah, things that are successful that really work for me. I'm not sure, I don't know if these things are going to work for me. And these things are, no way am I going to do that. I know that doesn't work for me. That's okay. You're giving them a choice. You're giving them the chance to be in control of it. You're not telling them how to think or feel. What you're doing is you're giving them a chance to control it. So one of my first cards is show how I'm feeling using clay, mosaic, collage, sand. So some of those crafty kids that find doing crafts and art really, really therapeutic, that's a really good one, isn't it? Because it does a few things, doesn't it? It distracts them from the situation. It gets rid of that thought of what's going on, the, you know, falling out with your friend or not being picked to go first. But it also distracts them and gives them something else to do, something else to think about. So where are we going to put this? So I think that's quite a good one. I'd put that one on the success one. So maybe. So what you do is you just decide which one along the way, where it's going to go, and I would say that one's good. And then you move on to another one. And so the next card says, write how I'm feeling using a journal, a song, a rap, or a poem. Now that could be a challenge for lots of kids, and I think that's quite a tricky one. And I think a lot of the kids I work with would not want to do that. So I think I might put that one in the no way pile. The next one I've got is speak and share with someone I feel gets me. So there's somebody in the school that understands me, that I feel comfortable talking to. Is that something I want to do? Do I think that's a positive thing? I might be, yeah, okay, that's positive. I'm going to put that on my positive one. That's on my success one. Retreat for a little bit into my tunnel, tent, den or hammock. Again, you can make your own cards because you can have the choices that are appropriate for school. Not everyone has a tunnel or a den or a hammock in school, but you might have a safe place. You might have a sensory area or somewhere, a corner that they can go to. So that kid might say, well, I've tried doing that before and it didn't work, so I might put that. But I don't know, actually, I might try and revisit that. I'm not sure about that one. That might be one I go to. There's all sorts. Hugging a pillow, person, a tree or a toy. A tree. Keep a ball or a feather or a balloon off the ground and float it for as long as possible. Yeah, that one. So there's lots and lots and lots in that pack. And then what you're doing is you're building up a profile. And then what you're actually doing is you're getting the child to decide on their tools. What works for me? What's the thing that's going to help me? Okay, so let's get back to the presentation and we'll move on quickly because we haven't got very many to do now. Okay, so as you can see, I've done one for blue and for, blue, green, yellow and red. So they're all available to you, so give those a go. So basically, you can set goals. You can set goals for this. There are 3 sort of areas to this. The first part, or the first bit of work you do, is actually identifying the emotions, identifying the feelings, understanding what those emotions are, what the zones mean. And that takes a lot of work and that takes a lot of generalisation. So that's quite a big thing to do, first of all. Then you need to move on to, right, getting them to understand that expected, unexpected behaviour, understanding that when I behave in a certain way in those zones, that makes other people feel. So I need more or less energy in those situations. And then the third bit, the last thing you do is actually getting them to understand there's a tool, picking a tool that they can use and using that tool themselves. Okay? Obviously, it's more in the book. I'm just giving you a sort of homogenised my version of what the book is, but obviously feel free to go and get the book and see what that says too. So finally, I've got 5 tips for using zones. Tip number 1, everybody has got to buy in, and that includes, whoops, I didn't mean to do that, let's go back. And that includes everybody, not just the class teacher, head teacher, senior leadership, dinner ladies, secretaries, who are always the people that are administering first aid, escorts if your child's been taken to school in a taxi, parents, grandparents, siblings, everybody. It works better if everyone is doing it. If we're all using the same vocabulary, it works better. And I understand there are some families for whom that's going to be a challenge, and I get that. So the optimum is for everybody to use it. But I think within a school environment, that everyone in school should absolutely be using it, because that's what we would expect. And if you're going to put time and effort into something, you've got to do it properly, haven't you? So let's make sure that everyone's doing what we want them to do. Okay. So the next one is, remember to be non-judgmental. The behaviour looks red, no one is red. So you can say, if you're seeing a child and they are shouting, screaming, what you're doing is observing it, and you're saying, Bobby, your behaviour is showing me that you're red. Now, we've learned some tools, haven't we, about red, and red's not a nice place for you to be. Let's go and see what we can do about getting you from red back to yellow a little bit. Let's go back and find our tools. Come with me and let's do that, okay? This is not about preferential treatment. This is not about giving in to people. It really isn't. This is factual. This is stuff that works, and this is, and I'm not about that, believe me. But it's about, for those kids who just cannot regulate, it's about giving them the idea that it isn't always the adult's job, that you're helping them to recognise it in themselves and have a plan for themselves. Make it accessible. Have the zones up. Be a zones environment. Have the zones around the classroom. If TAs have got the zone pictures on a key ring, maybe that would be a really good idea, because then you could just do a little bit, you're feeling a little bit this, aren't you? How are you feeling? Your behaviour, you've got your chin on there. I'm thinking you're looking to me like you're a bit blue. And what you're saying is that when I can see from you is that your behaviour is showing me that you're blue. I'm not making a judgment about you. I'm not saying you are blue. I'm saying your behaviour is showing me that you're a bit blue at the moment. Let's see if we can get you back to green, because we're in class and we'd like to get a bit of green today, wouldn't we? And it is for everyone. It's everybody. Everyone's going to get involved in it. So it's not something that's done to children. You're part of it. You've got to be honest. You've got to be open about how you're feeling and about what's going on. and about what zone you're in currently. And if somebody's behaviour is making you feel anxious, you can say, do you know, when you behave red, it makes me feel yellow. Yeah, it does. When I see your red, it makes me feel quite yellow. It makes me start to feel a little bit worried and a bit uneasy and uncomfortable. Yeah, it does have that impact on me. And most kids would be, wow, I can't believe that. I can't believe that's the case. Okay, you've got to be consistent. You've got to be not just doing this once a week. It's got to be ingrained within the curriculum. And it's not difficult to do. None of this is onerous. It's really easy. You could do it at the beginning, at the end of the day. You could do a zones check-in in the morning and a zones check-in just before they go home of an evening. So it's a really, really simple thing to do, but the buy-in is the most important thing. Everyone needs to be part of that. Okay, so for more information, obviously come to us, because we've put lots of resources on our Facebook page, and all of this is going to go on our Facebook page. Well, it does go on our Facebook page, but it's also going to go on the website. If you want to find out more about zones of regulation, then please go to their website, because there's loads of stuff on there. And like I said, there's special Facebook groups if you're into Facebook, and I'm sure there are on Twitter, but I don't really do Twitter. But if you go onto Facebook, there's lots of groups on there that share resources. They're a really lovely community, and Leah Coopers herself is part of that Facebook page, so she'll give you some direct advice, which is really great and really helpful. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about unexpected and expected behaviours and that social thinking curriculum, then go to the social thinking website, to Michelle Garcia Winner. There's loads of stuff on there. She does produce a lot of resources. There's a lot of stuff on there. So just have a look. Don't feel you've got to buy everything immediately. Just have a little look and see what you think might be helpful. Okay, so I can ask you if you've got any questions, but you can't say anything. But what you can do is you can get in contact with me. So please do. I'd love to know what you thought of the video, and if it was helpful, and if it wasn't helpful, and if you think there's something we could have added or not have added, please let me know all of that as well, because we take all of your information on board. It's really, really helpful. That's how we learn. So we've got our email address on there. That is our clinic phone number. As you can see, we are here, but without you. So give me a call. I'm here Monday to Thursday throughout the working day. So please give me a call if you want to have a chat. And it's been lovely. It's been so nice to be able to do this. I hope I haven't bored you all rigid. I hope it's gone okay. I really hope the technology's worked. And I really hope you're all staying safe and well, and that you and your families and all the children that you're working with are all going to be safe and well as well, as we enter this new time for everybody. And we cannot wait as a service to get back into schools to see you all. It's really important that we do that. So can't wait to see you all, and can't wait to give you all a hug if I'm allowed. And thanks again for watching. So I'm going to stop now. Thanks again. Do that thing at the end of a Zoom call where everybody waves. Bye everybody, thanks a lot.